Welcome to the Loopback. My name's Pierre and I'm your host today. We're going to be talking to Microsoft and odix. We've got Rani, Lofstrom and Omri, Eytan, and welcome. So, hi guys, how are you doing today?
All good. Thanks for having me.
Great. Thank you for having us.
Rani, do you want to give a little intro to yourself?
Hi, my name is Rani Lofstrom. I work for Microsoft and I look after the Microsoft Intelligent Security Association. So that's an ecosystem of independent software vendors and managed security service providers that have integrated their solutions with Microsoft securities to help us defend against threats our customers are facing. So we were founded just a few years ago in 2018, but we've got over 190 members to date that have made 200 plus integrations and over 75 different managed service offerings. So we're small but mighty and growing fast.
Yeah, great. So tell us a little bit about odix. You know, what is the company? What do you do? What kind of business challenges are you overcoming?
So odix has been around for about 7-8 years. We've been in the CDR space, mainly dealing with files and malware in files. And we recently launched a product that brings our security capabilities to the Microsoft 365 environment called Firewall. And that's been our main focus lately.
Fantastic. Sounds good. We'll definitely be getting into more of that later. So do you think, and it's a little bit controversial, and not a lot of people like to talk about the big COVID. Do you think that the disparate workforces and how people have changed working is accelerating some of that growth also, and also, like you mentioned, that the rise of cloud adoption, lots of new vendors and new growth vendors are coming out, and their products are now becoming quite relevant?
Yeah, it's been an interesting year, hasn't it? Satya Nadella gave a speech earlier this year where he said this first 6 months of COVID during the summer, we had, a couple of years worth of digital transformation in just a couple of months. And it's really true. All of these companies that had these, planning cycles of how they were going to migrate to the cloud and enable remote work and maybe let 20% of their workforce do remote work a day or two a week, they had to transition everybody all at once. And so it really was a pretty big shift in the type of technology they needed. And, just the trust they had to have with their employees, and how do you validate that trust? Because you can't really do that, right? So you have to be able to have these checks and balances to make sure that things are okay and keep them, moving and working at the same pace without the security getting in the way.
So, Omri, how is odix different to traditional sandbox solutions?
So our technology is different from traditional sandboxes and AVs in general, in the sense that all the legacy technologies are detection based, meaning that they're looking for something.
Okay.
Antiviruses are looking for certain binary patterns in files. The sandbox is looking for behavioral patterns in files. And our technology-based CDR is a detectionless technology that neutralizes and disarms malware without detecting it, without knowing that there is malware in the file. I know that sounds a bit like voodoo. Does that make any sense?
Sounds a little bit like magic. Yeah. You're doing some file magic to detect that.
Omri, I actually wanted to ask you a question about that, because when I was prepping for this podcast, I was going through your integration slides that we put together as part of MASA to share with the Microsoft sellers. And we talked about the fact that it was detectionless, and you guys essentially have a copy of the good version ahead of time. How does all of that work?
So we don't exactly have a good version of the file, but we know how to deep dive into the file and extract the content from within it and disarm it in a way that retains the user experience of the file, but disrupts any malware that might be in it by what I can only describe as digital cheap tricks,
Okay.
such as playing a bit with headers and coding, textual white spaces, and so on.
So when you mean files, are we talking any type of files of Word, PowerPoint, or could I put an application through Firewall, and it can look in the application and realize that it's not a genuine application?
Yeah, that's a great question. So CDR is at its best when it's used with data files, such as documents, Office documents, PDF documents, text files, HTML, JavaScript scripts, not with applications or binary files, not with executables and DLL files. And I think, and that is part of the reason that we came into MASA, is to find out how we can efficiently integrate with the other capabilities in the platform, to fill in that gap in our technology.
Okay, that's really interesting. So from a business perspective, how do you see end users benefiting from this type of technology, which is relatively new? I mean, I'd heard of content disarm technology, in passing, but I haven't really come across it many times. So, how is new businesses now, SMBs, kind of mid-size, how are they really benefiting from this?
It's an additional layer of security on top of their existing email security. Yeah. It's very simply deployed, and it's very effective at dealing with 0 days. So if we discussed about, the detection-based platforms, so they need to know what they're looking for in order to detect it. You need to know something in order to detect it. And 0 days by definition haven't been seen yet, so they are undetectable in a sense. So our technology really shines when dealing with 0 days and unknown malware.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'm really into that. So Microsoft, as everyone knows, is a big player. They're probably the largest vendor out there at the moment. And what's the importance of establishing a relationship, like Microsoft establishing relationships with new startup scale-up vendors? Like how is that benefiting the rest of us?
There just isn't a world where Microsoft is going to be a company's only security solution. So providing a platform where other security companies can integrate with Microsoft and connect with each other, it only helps our customers. And that really is our end goal, right? If you take all the sales and competitive stuff just off the table, at the end of the day, we're all trying to help our customers be more secure. And that aligns really nicely with the Microsoft mission about empowering people to do more, right? They can't do that if they're not secure. So if we build this ecosystem, this is why MASA was put together. If we build the ecosystem, make it easy for companies like Odix to build integrations and partner with us, it's going to help our customers, and it's going to provide those layers of security that supports a defense in depth strategy that everybody needs, right? So you have your email from Microsoft, you have your email security tool like Microsoft Defender for Office, and it's gonna do some of that attachment stuff, but it also does a whole lot of other things. The safe links piece also is going to work, to click on URLs for going to websites and a whole host of other capabilities, right? But that additional layer that Odix provides for finding malware, for finding 0 days, all of that benefits, right? There's nothing competitive about that. That's only goodness. So by having these small companies that have found something really innovative and are doing something new, making sure that it's easy for them to tuck into what our customers need, it helps us. And then if we have all of these pieces lined up, the integration's complete. It takes away the headache and the complexity and the cost that usually is associated with integrations. And, it helps us get just a little step closer to that holy grail of really having a single pane of glass, which, it's unattainable, but we always want to shoot for that goal.
Yeah, the single pane of glass is, everyone wants to get there, but whether we do is a different story.
Us marketing people like to talk about it for sure.
How does MASA work? So I'm a security vendor, odix 2.0. Do you approach me, or do I approach you and say, I want to integrate into 365 because I solve a problem that Microsoft haven't looked at or are missing? Talk me through that process.
Yeah, so we have 18 products in the MASA portfolio solution. So it can come two ways. Each of those product teams owns their own partner integration strategy, right? They know their world better. The email security team, they do their thing. The endpoint security does their team. Azure Sentinel team does their thing. And if they've identified a gap that they need a partner to help integrate with to fill, or a specific company that our customers are just clamoring for us to integrate with, they're going to go out and contact that partner and say, hey, work with us. Let's build this integration together. In exchange, we're going to nominate you for MASA, and you get all these great benefits for partnering with Microsoft. It's also pretty common to see companies build these integrations using the public APIs, and then after that establish relationships with our partner organization, and who will then review the integration and do the nomination. So it is a nomination process. It is driven by the product teams. They have the choice of who they think is important either to our customers or important to the product strategy in terms of capabilities being extended. And then once those nominations are made, they sign the MASA agreement and they're in the program. But the cool thing about MASA is once you've signed the MASA agreement to join, all 18 of those products are now kind of available to you, right? So, odix wants to build on the couple of integrations they have right now and do more and go deeper with Microsoft. Now we can help make those introductions to the other product teams. They don't have to go through a hassle of signing additional contracts and paperwork. They can just get down to the business of building these integrations and helping our customers, which is what the purpose is.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I really like that. I think a lot of people are moving to Azure or Microsoft Online 365. So I really like the fact that you're building an ecosystem of third-party or partner vendors who complement the Microsoft products. So maybe a little bit of an awkward question, but what stops Microsoft developing the same product? So you see odix, you think that's a fantastic technology.
Yeah.
Why don't we just develop the same thing? You've got thousands and thousands of developers. So what is stopping that? Maybe you can't answer that question. I don't know, but I thought.
Well, I'll give you a high level response. I mean, because that is an important question, right? There is so much work to do in the security world. I mean, the backlogs each of these product teams are looking at and prioritizing, like I would never want to do that job. It's tough. I sit in on the roadmap conversations every quarter to understand what they're doing and where they're going. And sometimes there is competitive overlap, right? This piece of the business has become so core that Microsoft has to extend and build that out to stay just a regular player in the space, right? Security is moving at a fast clip, but there's no possible way that Microsoft is going to do everything for every player. We just don't have the number of developers, even though we have thousands and thousands of them, right? We have to integrate. We want to integrate. Our customers want us to integrate. It's just a smart strategy. So we'll continue to do that. And for our members of MASA that are really engaged with us and want to build more integrations and go deeper with us, we have smart folks that I can connect them up with to do some strategy planning so we can make sure that our roadmaps are aligned and complementary versus, directly competitive.
So it was a little bit of a loaded question, and I think it was a really good response. That was quite clear for me. So a little bit of a loaded question because my next question was about Microsoft safer attachments. Is it complementary to each other? Is there something that 365 Safer Attachments isn't doing, which Odix is doing over the top, or do you work together?
I definitely see it as a work together type of solution. And Omri, I'm going to say this and then punt to you so you can be more technical on your solution. But if you look at Exchange Online, which has some basic email protection, and then Microsoft Defender for Office, which is our email security solution, that's really big and broad and comprehensive. It does a lot more than just safe attachments, right? There's the safe links piece that I mentioned earlier, where you click on a link, it makes sure that that URL is safe, and there's a whole host of other things that product does. So Odix isn't competing with that product. It's taking one aspect that we do, layering on top of it, and making sure that malware is protected from a zero-day standpoint. I don't think that's bad. Like having multiple layers of checks and balances to make sure that malware is not getting into your company seems like a pretty good thing, right? It aligns with most folks' defense in depth strategy. And then, for the ticky-tacky like specifics, Omri, maybe you can follow up and provide some additional color there.
Yeah, sure. I think just on a broader note, what we're looking for is to create a kind of gestalt, where Microsoft's native security and our security capabilities, when put together, generate value that is greater than the sum of the parts. So if we're looking at safe attachments and the detonation that it's doing, so we're trying to develop mechanisms in a way that will allow safe attachments to work better and more efficiently for the clients and Microsoft, if it is by enabling a dynamic delivery mechanism that is provided by us and just relegates to the detonation engine the file types that we do not support, for example, to offload some of the files that we can handle instead of the sandbox and provide them much faster, for example. But as I mentioned, there are types that we do not support. And in this case, ATP does amazing work at handling these files. And as part of MASA, we were able, to get in touch with the people that are in charge of these areas in Microsoft and kind of coordinate with them what would be the best way for us, to work in their kind of environment and over on top of their products and deliver that extra value.
Okay. Yeah, brilliant. I think that was really clear and understandable. Emails has always been a problem, for many organizations. It's normally the first entry point in any attack, phishing campaigns, people sending through links or attachments at X, Y, and Z. So from the Microsoft and Odix standpoint, I can see where the Odix fits in. So how, and I can understand Microsoft wanting to partner with multiple organizations who can help kind of combat this massive business risk. But where do you think, like, what is the next step to protect against like email based attack vectors? Like how can organizations get better at this? Or is it the vendors? Do we need to pressure Microsoft to do better at email filtering and creating better products?
My cheeky response would be yes to all of that. I mean, I don't think there is a single silver bullet that's going to fix anything. You got to train your employees. You have to test them. You have to check on it. We have to continually improve our email security solutions. We have to, improve the behavioral detections we have. Identity, is a key piece in keeping all of that secure. Zero-day malware protections, all of it. Like, we just have to level up our game.
You've just touched on something that I didn't think about bringing into this conversation, but I have seen a huge rise in identity-based detections, or people looking at identities in far more scrutiny. And and I'm going to probably touch on something that was, SolarWinds, which a lot of people are discussing and writing about. So it's very well covered. But I would probably say, for me, SolarWinds seems to have accelerated every business's, one, third-party risk assessment, and two, looking at identities. So from your perspective, Rani, what are you seeing? Like, what's Microsoft doing about identities? Like, what types of controls and technologies are you looking to implement, either from the MASA space, or looking at other vendors, or from or homegrown?
Yeah, identity, I think it's one of the most fundamental pieces of security that has to be addressed. Microsoft's big play in identity is to go passwordless, right? I lament the fact that I have many friends and family that use their dog's name for their password. They have the exact same password for everything. If you know the Wi-Fi password, you can get into their bank account, and it's like I'm talking to my mom, my best friend, my father-in-law, all of these people. And they say, okay, yeah, that's a good idea, but they don't actually make changes. And the reason they don't do that is because remembering passwords is really hard, right? You don't want to remember 50 different passwords that have big, long, string requirements with different characters in them. It's just not feasible for everybody to do. If we could take that complexity off the table and go passwordless and get people to actually do MFA for every system they have, 99% of our problems would be solved.
Yeah, I think the passwordless is the nirvana, the true. That's what everyone wants to go. Everyone wants to get there, but I think it's going to take a very long time until we go true passwordless. I would like a world where everything has Touch ID on it. To be honest with you, that'd be perfect. So I don't have to remember a password ever.
Great.
So biometrics everywhere.
2 forms of MFA. Yeah. Yes. FIDO2 keys are great. Not only do you have to have the physical key, but now you can put a thumbprint on it. So, you can do a shared terminal if you're a first line worker, or, you're an Amazon warehouse guy, or whatever, a doctor logging in an exam room, whatever it is. So all of those things just need to become like standard. And that's another area where MASA is helping. We've got a whole group of members that are doing these amazing FIDO2 keys. So bringing all these pieces of security together is, I think, the really cool mission that MASA has. If we can all come together and integrate, not just with Microsoft, but other MASA members with other MASA members, the software vendors with the service providers, the world's going to be safer. Like, this is a lofty mission that we have, but it's a cool one, and it's a necessary one.
So, Omri, how do you integrate odix's solution into a technology stack? So, I normally have many customers that say, great technology, these things are fantastic, but how do I get it? How do I get it to work? How do I go from zero to being fully protected? Is it an easy process? Is it difficult? Do I have to spend lots of time doing that?
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think one of the big pains that we had with our legacy products was deployment. There was a lot of friction to deploy our product, and I think this was one of the main benefits that we saw in working with the Microsoft Graph API and marketplaces, is that any customer can just log in to their Azure portal and just buy and activate firewall with the click of a button. Same goes for Microsoft 365 customers and AppSource. Just click a button and you're up and running. You don't need to change any mail flow infrastructure. A lot of email solutions require you to change MX records, which affects the the mail flow of the entire organization, versus using the Graph API, which allows to enable firewall on a single user without interfering with the rest of the organization.
Okay, cool. That's really interesting. So it's very minimal configuration then. Almost, I don't want to say set and forget, but it's very much a one-click type of activity.
So it's a one-click deployment. We've given a lot of thought, and we're constantly tuning the default vanilla setup that we roll out, in a way that will give good enough protection without requiring, system admin to start tinkering and tuning it and giving it, hours and hours worth of configurations. So we're really focused on minimizing the time it takes for a company to deploy our solution, from click purchase and until everything is up and running.
So purchase, I think one of the really difficult topics for, especially for SMEs, is that they almost feel priced out of a lot of cybersecurity technologies. One that always comes to mind is EDR. EDR is a very fantastic technology. I can see big benefits and see really good business benefits, but it is expensive. Some of the EDR technologies are really expensive, so a lot of smaller organizations feel priced out. And I remember I had a conversation once on LinkedIn, and this was again straight after SolarWinds, where someone commented saying, if SolarWinds can get hacked, then what's the point in me spending my small budgets on technology? So from an odix pricing perspective, does your pricing model support the smaller organizations all the way up to the large multinationals?
So we had the SMBs and SMEs in mind when we developed the product and set the pricing. It's currently priced at $1 per user per month. So for a small business, 20, 30 employees, it's a very minimal monthly expense. The enterprise product and features cost a bit more, but it comes with enterprise features and enterprise needs, which is a bit of a different game. And having all the benefits of using the Microsoft platforms to deliver our product, so we don't need to deal ourselves with billing, with authentication and identification, which you touched earlier. And a lot of things that we get from Microsoft enable us to focus on what we do and deliver that in a very cost and value added product pricing.
Okay, that's really cool, because I think especially 365 is very focused on that SMB market, and which is a big market. I think a lot of cybersecurity vendors focus on the large multinationals, huge thousands, 10, 20,000 employees, and develop products for those people, which is fine, because there's a need, there's specific needs, there's specific technologies that require those big types of organizations. But I was looking at some statistics the other day, in terms of how many SMBs get attacked a year is crazy. It's really high. I think some of the Hiscox statistics, if I remember rightly, it was 1.5 million SMBs come under cyber attack every single year, and that's just an average. And a lot of those either feel they don't need to, cybersecurity is expensive, so we won't worry about that. So I think it's really good that Microsoft and other new cybersecurity organizations are focusing in that market, because they're the mass, and the mass sometimes can control a lot of what's going on. So talking about new startups, new types of technologies, it's no secret. A lot of the new technology comes out of Israel. This seems to be the playground of the new startups, new scale ups. So from a Microsoft perspective, Rani, how does Microsoft support Silicon Wadi? What is Microsoft doing in this area?
Yeah, well, first up, I'm not gonna lie, I had to look up what Silicon Wadi was. But once I figured out that Wadi meant Valley, I'm like, I got it. I've seen the show, I've been there, I've been in tech for 20 years, love it. And it's really true. We were talking, during the setup of the show of how cool Herzliya is, the beaches, the food. There's so many cybersecurity companies there. We'll be looking to have a MASA event next year, COVID, willing. But there's just a lot of cool tech happening in the space. And I think especially cybersecurity. There seem to be a few hubs around the world for security. You know, Atlanta is one, I think Seattle and Silicon Valley, and Israel. Gosh, we've got at least 10 companies that have headquarters in Israel. And I think most of the other bigger players also have offices there, just because there's a lot of talent that has deep, institutional knowledge on security and tech in general in that space. So Microsoft just recently opened up a new office there. It's supposed to be this amazing, really high tech office where they're taking the water condensation off of the air conditioners, and they'll use that to water the plants that will grow food that the workers are going to eat. I mean, it's just beyond. So
that's state of the art.
It's a cool new place to be.
Yeah, that's really
right?
cool. Yeah, I think it's I've had a lot of conversations with people, cybersecurity companies that are in the Silicon Valley of Israel, Silicon Wadi, and I think it's a really, really cool, seems to be a really cool place to be at the moment. And there's always been lots of innovation. So from an audit perspective, is there a almost a community of cybersecurity vendors? Do you all kind of share not share technology, but do you share kind of like stories back and forth and share your ideas? And is there that type of community, or is it just everyone for themselves?
So Israel's a small place. I think all in all, there's about 10 million people in Israel. So it's kind of like a big city anywhere else around the world. And if you zoom into the cybersecurity industry, then you have a few thousands, I'm guessing. And so it's very interlinked, because past employees from our company moved to other companies, and we in turn brought in people from other companies. So you're always, people talk about 6 degrees of separation. I think here in Israel, in the cybersecurity community, it's much, much, much lower than that. I think at most cases you're one handshake away from connecting with someone, be it the actual cybersecurity vendors, or the cybersecurity VCs, or the cybersecurity customers that consume these products. So everything here is very tied and interconnected between everyone, and I think that's also one of the key factors in the success of the ecosystem here, because you get a lot of input and insights, and there are a lot of cooperation, collaboration opportunities that you encounter when interacting with the community.
Yeah, I thought it would have been that type of collaborative community of people just moving around different organizations, and there's no, I would say don't burn bridges. So, everyone's sharing the same information. There's the same goal. Everyone wants to, create technology that's, that provides innovation and provides better security for everyone. So that does make sense. One thing that I've discussed with other organizations is the kind of like xenophobia around Israeli organizations, and that's generally because what I see comes from kind of leaders of these businesses that are ex-military, and the go-to is popping up an office in the US or in Germany or in a different country. So how do you what's your personal opinion about that type of attitude?
Well, I can understand where it's coming from. Certainly, if it's a company that is regulated, under a government that is considered, not friendly to Israel or not in warm relations. But it just saddens me to my core, because I don't give two shits about politics, and I'm really, pro people, and we just do security, and we don't care who's consuming it. And if someone somewhere takes offense to where our offices are located and wants to judge us by that and not by the technology that we create and what we do and how we do it, then they're lost.
Yeah, I think it's
Here.
yeah. I think there's a lot of innovation coming out of your part of the world, and it needs to be looked past. You need to look past the location and assess the technology for itself. Go on, Rani. Sorry.
Ashley, I was just going to say, I think the security community itself it's unique, right? Security people are a little different. They're a little bit weird, and they really like the fact that they're a little bit different and weird. And right, it's fun. You go to places like, DEF CON in Vegas, and you see this just really tight-knit community where people are coming together from all over the world to do cool things. And it doesn't matter if you're different than the person sitting next to you. If you guys can talk about the same type of thing, you'll sit there and have coffee or drinks or whatever until the wee hours of the morning, and you get it done. Like, you're just doing good security work. And from my perspective in Seattle, I've been in security for 7 or so years now, but in tech, for more than 20. It just feels welcoming. I think, at least in the Microsoft world, in the Seattle tech world, people see Israel as like a cool place to be with a lot of tech going on. And there's not much of a conversation beyond that. Seattle's a pretty liberal city, so maybe it's not that way everywhere. But I think within the security community, you have just a lot more inclusivity, and then disdain for everybody else outside. I say that with love in my heart.
No, well, I think there's no secret that that Israel is probably, for the community that I have around me, that Israel is probably the leaders in cybersecurity technology. Yes, you have other nations, doing their part, but I would probably say most of the new, big innovations that I've seen in the last few years have all come out of Israel. Or they've been acquired. There's been a small organization that's been acquired by a larger and amalgamated into the machine. But yeah, I think it's really cool what's happening. I like the type of the ecosystem. I think it's what you're saying, and I think that's really, really cool. I really do like that. So, touching on something that we talked about earlier in terms of a safer world through shared vision and strategy, do you think it's possible? Because what I've experienced is a lot of some vendors, and we won't name names, they talk about, okay, we're in a cybersecurity alliance, we share information, we share strategy, we share X, Y, and Z to make everything safer. But that's just marketing. They don't actually do that. They put that on the website, they put it on marketing material. But do you think it will take someone like in Microsoft to say, no, you will do it, because if you want to play in our ecosystem, you've got to join in, you've got to play, you've got to share information with all sort of the partners. So do you think it's possible to have that safer cyber world and with everyone sharing information?
I think at some point it has to be. You mentioned SolarWinds before. I don't think we would have known the scope of the breaches that happened if Kevin Mandia hadn't stood up and shared information. Do I think everyone's going to share everything always? No, that's unrealistic, right? But we have to have that as our goal. And I think if we can all center around the fact that if we put the customer's needs first and we do what's right, things can trickle from there. And there are ways you can protect your IP and your corporate secrets and the secret sauce of your product and still work together in a way that benefits the world. Microsoft's big mission right now is creating security for all. We want small companies to be able to access it. We want big companies to be able to access it. And to do that, we're going to need the whole community to come together. So, I don't know if it has to be Microsoft that's doing this, but this is something that we're raising our hands and saying, we think it's important. We're going to put some money and some people behind building this community. And so far, the response has been great. Everyone seems to feel the same way. And so it's just a matter of building it. And I think not just building, the corporate contractual relationships, but, building the personal connections and the relationships. So, a name and a face when you go to RSA, or, you go to Israel and you go to, a cybersecurity event there. We need to just link arms and be friends a little bit.
I like that, link arm and be friends. Yeah, I think that's I think that's a really good idea. I think that's cool. So from the odix perspective, and it's probably my last technical question maybe, but so if a file goes into odix, you say, oh, it's malware, we've content disarmed that, here's a clean file. Is there a way of sharing that information to say, this is what we found in this file, these IOCs have never been seen before, we'll put that out for everyone to look at? Is that something that you're working on, or is not ready?
I think it relates to your last question on who we share, the information from our product, and we do that. It took us a long, process to realize that we're not that unique and special, and that it is better for us and our clients that we deliver that information onwards to the proverbial single pane of glass. So that in mind, when we launched Firewall, it had a built-in integration with Microsoft Sentinel, the SIM SOAR platform for Azure. So every file that we find and disarm during the CR process, all the information we collect is relayed to Sentinel and can be cross-referenced along, of course, with the email information, where it originated from, and so on. So security analysts will be able, to link the dots when they do investigations and forensics work. And it takes a lot of work off our plate as well, because we don't need to develop, those screens and capabilities, because they're already built by Microsoft, by teams that are, bigger and I dare say better than us, than are more experienced with providing these types of solutions, instead of us, as security people, trying our best at user experience of SIM and reporting platforms.
Cool. Sentinel seems to be taking over.
I just want to add that the Sentinel integration is what brought us eventually into MASA. That was the integration that got us nominated to join MASA.
That's cool. Rani, how many partners are in the Sentinel kind of pool? Like, because I was in a conversation.
Oh man,
with
ask
earlier.
Me today and ask me a month. Yeah, if you ask me today, the answer is going to be different than a month from now. I mean, the Sentinel folks, I would say, if you look at the MASA ecosystem, both for ISPs and MSSPs, they have the most integrations. It's the nature of, the SIM/SOAR world that you've got to have a really deep set of partners that are feeding logs into your tool, and, service providers that want to consume them and provide managed services on top. So I think that team has really aggressive goals, and I know by the end of the year, they're looking to double the number of connectors that they have built. Wow. And in our next fiscal year, double and then some again. So they built the tools. We have these really easy ways for software vendors to connect in using the connector tools that we have. And yeah, hopefully it's just going to do this. So odix was one of the very first companies that came in. They're a bit of a pioneer, but they've proven the model, and now other companies are going to replicate that.
I see Sentinel as really changing the game. I remember the preview coming out and people saying Microsoft aren't going to create a SIEM. Like they can't do that. Like what do they just stick to Office and stick to Clippy. Stop, don't be creating a security product.
Clippy.
Clippy,
I miss
know.
them.
R.I.P. Clippy. But it's really taken off, hasn't it?
Yeah, you know what? I came from this sim world. It has. You know, it really has. So I came from the sim world before this. I ran marketing for a sim startup in Seattle that focused in the financial space. So it's a space that I hold near and dear. And I just think it's so central. Like if you're not reviewing all of your logs, you know, you've got gaps in what you're doing, you know, and then building in the SOAR capabilities on top of that. So you can not only see what's happening, but then take action to automatically remediate. That's the key piece, right? Getting back to one of your comments earlier about the small businesses, they don't have the manpower and the people to physically do the work. You know, we talk about alert fatigue, but what about the things you identify as bad and then the time it takes to remediate all of that? If you can identify something that's bad, have it automatically fixed according to, you know, playbooks that you've pre-approved, wow, that's going to not only save time, but it's going to make your organization more secure. So that's that closing that whole loop where Odix integrates in through the Graph Security API, finds this, you know, really tough 0-day malware, sends information to Sentinel. They can action playbooks to remediate that, and then, you know, bring in experts to do the hard stuff that humans need to do, but take away a lot of that just, you know, routine, repetitive, busy work. So that's when security starts to get really cool, is when automation starts changing the game and saving time in a way that it hasn't before. That's when security becomes accessible for all people.
Brilliant.
I'm excited
I like
now.
That. I like that, security becoming accessible for all people through automation. I love it. So I think that's where we're going to end on here. I think it was a really good conversation. I really enjoyed it. So, you know, thank you guys for coming on and talking to me today.